whatever that means to them. There's never been a time that we've been like, no, and send the story back. They come into a story workshop session with all of us, the 4 storytellers and the other 2 members of the Know You Tell It creative team, which is around. And we workshop the stories on the page, like creative writing workshop, and eventually the stories are paired and partnered. So tonight you're going to see the partners, they're flipped, and they've been telling each other's story. And they also, the power move, I like the writer to sit up on stage along with their story partner that's performing their story, just to kind of keep that team effort flowing, this idea of pairing and partnering. But before we hear the first story of the night, which Allison has written, and that Skye is going to perform, I'd like to do a little Q&A, so this is wise for your I'd like to do a little Q&A with the author, and so we can hear a little bit of their voice before their partner shares their story with everybody. So my question for you, Allison, is, so Allison works for Newtown Literary. You work as an editor. There's a lot of contributors to that wonderful literary magazine that's also available for purchase here at the bookstore. And I also know that you work at the Center for Fiction, which for over 200 years has been located in Manhattan, but is now moving to Brooklyn. But I imagine that as being like the very worst version of like, oh my gosh, I have to move and clean out my apartment, and what am I going to do with all these books? So what has been like, I know you're relatively new, like what is the grit that's going into this move that you guys are working on?
Well, we're already out of the building, but at the end of last year I had to basically supervise the move of books that had been in place for that long, since the 1930s. Wow. So I was finding all kinds of gems and really old dusty things that had been falling apart, but it was very cool.
What's your favorite thing that you found?
I found a first edition of T.S. Eliot's poems, which I priced, and it was worth about $6,000.
Wow.
T.S. Eliot.
Great way to start us off. Very spirit. So we're going to hear Vessel in Distress, written by Allison Escoto and performed by Skye Holly.
Dressel in distress. Here's the thing about your heart. Without you noticing, it normally just does its work. It sets the pace, directs traffic through 60,000 miles of vessels, and propels you forward through life in fist-sized pumps. You take it for granted and only really pay mind to it in a figurative, poetic kind of way. When you're in love, when you're nervous, when you're sad. During those times, you not only give it all your attention, but you assign poetry to it. You rhapsodize or wallow in it. It breaks in half, or it fills to bursting. And okay, maybe once or twice a year you pay it lip service. I'll pump you full of energy. I'll eat salmon and drink red wine. I'll stop smoking and working so hard. But you never mean it. Or you only half mean it. And then there's the moment when, after ignoring the advice of centuries of poets, decades of tea moon pots, and the messages of every listening song ever written, you're forced to give in and listen to your heart. Because one day you might feel moments of uneasiness, and you can't pinpoint exactly why. Mostly because they're barely noticeable. Almost like the memory of being uneasy or an echo you hear from far away. Throughout the day, you might feel momentarily confused and on edge. But the feelings will just right themselves. And a few days will pass by normally, but then it will come back again, and suddenly you will realize you can actually hear it. The erratic Morse code flutter coming from your chest. Too much coffee, not enough sleep, too much work. Sure. But totally fine. That's what you try to tell yourself. At least that's what I did. I turned 40 in 2016. I could probably end the story there. 40 is the punchline year. And you remember 2016, right? That catastrophe that could have been accompanied by a rainforest. When the world at large seemed brokenhearted, with pop culture heroes dying and the large-scale circus that was a presidential election. It was a year when it seemed that everyone around me was dealing with bespoke tragedy. The world was thrown into chaos with one bad thing happening after another, and just when I thought I had my millionth thought of, it can't get any worse, both of my beloved cats died, one after the other. When I look back on my life through old and squinted eyes for the highlights, the best ofs, the greatest hits, 2016 is not going to make the cut. I'm actually hoping that by the time I'm an old lady, we'll have developed a mind erase procedure because I'll take a hard pass on 2016. Throughout all the turmoil of that year, I did my best just to power through it all. I'd make plans and small talk, trying to ignore the world on fire outside and the inside of my empty house. And all the while, that strange off feeling would ebb and flow. Then one day, I'm sitting at my desk after lunch when I feel certain I'm going to die. I feel like my heart is clawing its way out of my chest like a trapped animal. I'm dizzy, completely out of breath. It feels like something is chasing me. It's not a wave of panic. It's a never-ending pounding of waves that has no end in sight. I'm alone in the room and panic takes over. I have a fleeting thought about how ridiculous it is to panic over panicking, and it feels suddenly like I'm lost in some weird, absurd play. I stagger up from my chair, holding onto the edge of my desk as I make my way to the next room. I know I have to get out. I can't hear anything but the loud and fast pounding of my heart. I lurch forward, as though I'm trying to exit my own body or somehow transmit its distress call into the next room so that someone else can hear it. I pass by a group of coworkers who are chatting and making plans about happy hour after work, and I want to scream, to let them know I'm in trouble. But I find myself completely unable to make a sound. So I keep walking past them, trying my best to catch up to my breath. By the time I get to the other side of the building, my heart slows down, the feelings start to subside, and the world seems to stop shaking. I wasn't prepared for how difficult it would be to describe what I felt to the army of doctors I saw later that afternoon or during the weeks that followed. When the cardiologist asked me to describe my symptoms, I couldn't put it into words. Maybe because it had only lasted a few minutes and then went away, so nothing had happened. When the cardiologist asked me to describe my symptoms, I couldn't put it into words. Maybe because it had only lasted a few minutes and then went away as though nothing had happened. I wanted to tell him that in the weeks before this episode, I hadn't been feeling myself, but the only words that were coming to me were vague, not really concrete, just like the feelings had been. I had the odd idea that if I didn't describe my symptoms clearly, it would seem like I was lying, that no one would believe me. This was a completely foreign emotion for me. I've always felt confident in explaining my feelings, but sitting in that doctor's office felt like I had been pushed into the ocean and was adrift, unable to tell anyone where I was. After the initial x-rays, blood tests, physical exams, stethoscope prodding, and several abysmally inadequate answers later, I was sent home wearing a Holter monitor, my chest covered in sticky round electrodes like a green screen actor. During that following week, I experienced no panic, no shortness of breath. It was like I had spotted a shark fin break the ocean surface in the distance, only to have it completely disappear by the time everyone else looked. Supraventricular tachycardia. My cardiologist let the words out in a steady, confident beat, as though they were normal words. I had worn the monitor for a week by then and was sitting in his office while he was avoiding eye contact. I'm sorry, what? I wouldn't have been able to finish even if I had tried. He wasn't looking at me anyway. He was reading my chart, oblivious to my confusion. Supraventricular tachycardia. Rapid heartbeat. It's very common. Again, The words came to him as if they were something people said in everyday conversation. Very calming. To feel like you might die at random. I thought that, but I didn't dare say it out loud, afraid I would sound stupid. Your heart had 15 episodes of rapid heartbeat during the week. Were you running on a treadmill at any point? What's a treadmill? Instead, I said, no. I really had done the absolute minimum amount of activity during the week following that first incident. But I felt nothing. There was no way those results were accurate, right? But this condition can just appear without anyone knowing why, like a mysterious random eye twitch. There are certain triggers, stress being one, and it can happen all the time, whether you feel it or not. And it happened to me 15 times in 1 week. Among many other things, my heart is a sneaky bastard. I always gave myself more credit than I deserved when it came to handling stress. I was convinced that as long as I wasn't balled up in the corner of a darkened room somewhere, as long as I could still feel a steady pulse at the base of my uneven lifeline, I was totally okay. As long as I had all my stuff together, that stress was something that happened on the outside and had very little to do with me. So, I continued my routine of going to work and back again, worrying most of the day about pretty much everything, but leaving that worry to the sidelines, to a place where I could always kind of see it, but not really feel it directly. Apparently, my heart was not informed of this routine. It was sending me messages. No, it was broadcasting messages so loudly that I couldn't ignore them. In the middle of all this hyper-concentration on my heart and its distress signals, I find that I dream in vivid images. In one dream, I'm getting a chest x-ray and watching myself from just outside the room. When the doctor turns the machine on, the room is filled with fading yellow light. The x-ray machine transforms into a sepia-drenched film, and my heart doesn't appear suspended in the middle of my body like a Day-Glow centerpiece, the way it normally does in an x-ray. Instead, it's held in place by vintage-looking, worn leather straps and belts with buckles. These straps wrap several times around my heart, squeezing it tight as small droplets appear from various points on the violently quivering muscle. When I wake up from this dream, I'm not alarmed or scared. I'm strangely sad. This is either because my subconscious can't help but be very obvious and heavy-handed with metaphors, or because the previous weeks had reminded me that we are all completely beholden to our bodies, and there's very little we can do to control what happens inside them. We can put less pressure on them, we can give them release and relaxation, we can sit up straight at our desks and limit our poisons. But we have to follow our body's leads. We have to keep a lookout and decode the signals sent out from within. What I have is mild and something a person can live with. As long as you make peace with the notion that there will be episodes arriving at random during which you are positive you're going to leave this earth in a frenzy of panic. Stress has to be whittled down to a small nub. You should live without alcohol and caffeine and sugar and joy and happiness. While there are medications and surgeries, I've chosen to just live with it. I'm learning to come up for air every now and again to keep my eyes on the horizon. My heart still talks to me, sometimes with confidence and positivity, sometimes stupidly drunk on infatuation, often very loudly with anxiety. The episodes have become rare, but when I notice the radio frequency change, when the faint echo of a transmission is trying to get through, I stop what I'm doing, breathe deeply, and I listen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Skye and Allison. Now, as you can see, they're switching it up. The Catholic Italian in me has to let you guys know that there's chairs. Feel guilty that you're standing, so if anybody wants to grab some, there's also a little bit of wine on the side. So switching it up, our second story this evening was written by Skye Holly. So you're gonna have to rise and do your interview. over here. So I'm very excited to have Skye here. As we both, I don't think we were ever in at the same time, but we both did the same MFA program with Fairleigh Dickinson University. Yeah. But did you ever go to Roxton?
Yeah.
Okay. So a big part of the program, what drew me to the program, was a low residency program. So you would do these writing residencies and go back to your real life and do a lot of it online. But the winter residency was at Roxton College. This is like old-fashioned, like Downton Abbey looking place in England. Which I got to go to twice. So I was just wondering, did you ever have any Roxton adventures? Any England adventures that stood out to you? I know, it was a giggle right away.
One thing that was kind of adventurous was getting locked in my room. And I can't remember his name.
Oh, that guy. This guy, the first day they bring you into this fancy room and this guy gives you a speech about basically how the whole place could go up in 7 minutes.
Right.
Like anything gets sold.
Happens.
Yeah, so there's all these lockdown procedures.
So you have 7 minutes to evacuate if such anything should happen. So I was locked out of my room somehow. I'm just sitting like, I'll be the first one to go. And my mentor, Minna, is arguing with one of the maintenance persons saying, "You gotta get her out of there." And someone says, "Ma'am, I think you're gonna have to jump out the window." And I'm looking out the window and it's really high and I'm like, I don't think I can jump out the window. And then I come back and say, "Do I really have to jump out the window?" And they're like, yes, you have to. What if something happens? And then Minna is arguing back and forth with this guy, like, "No, she can't jump out the window, but I would do it." And so they finally get me out, and she's asking me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." She said, "What were you doing?" I said, "I was just staring out the window and sitting in my bed." And then she says, "Yeah, I didn't really want you to do that. You might get hurt." But she said, "I would have done it because I think it's cool."
That's
Very Minna. So that was one of the...
Actually, yeah. So it is those tiny adventures.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was great.
So with that, we're going to hear Allison read your story, Higher Degrees of Grief, written by M. Skye Hawley and read by Allison.
Higher degrees of grief. I'm a sucker for graduations. I bump my head to pomp and circumstance like it's a Billboard hit. If you find that strange, wait until the Star-Spangled Banner is sung. My heart thumps thunderously inside my chest whenever the soloist is introduced and walks across the stage. I'm excited, I'm nervous. Many have succeeded and many have failed miserably. Even though I know I will never belt this out to an audience, and I would be sincere. I want it done right. Every spring, I look forward to the invitations to commencements of all kinds. From preschool to med school, I'm down to attend them all and savor every moment. Considering my enthusiasm for all things ceremonial, I found myself dreading the very thought of graduating with my master's degree. When I was accepted into the MFA creative writing program at Fairleigh Dickinson University, I blushed. I remember my cheeks feeling an instant rush of warmth. Then I gasped. Then I said thank you. I should have said thank you first. My manners were probably blushing too. It took all of me a few minutes to accept what was actually happening. My wishes of delving into literary spaces and testing my creative limits had been granted. When the director of the program notified me over the phone, I was elated and grateful. I emailed her the very next day to ask her if this was really happening. She replied back and said, "It is, it's real. Congratulations me." After her phone call, the first call I made was to Kevin. "Hey Skye, how's it going?" he said. I slowly shared the news with him, hearing it out loud for the second time, but the first time from my own mouth. "I got in, Kev. I'm going to Fairleigh Dickinson," I said. "All right, of course you did, Skye. You're the real deal," Kevin said. "I'm really proud of you, Skye. Can't wait to tell Janet. We gotta celebrate," he said. Kevin loved to celebrate, and that was one of the things I loved about him. He was cheerful 24/7, and his enthusiasm for any milestone in my life was met with the same vigor as any small step in my life. A couple of days later, we spoke again, and his wife Janet reiterated to me how proud Kevin was. "He keeps talking about it, Skye," Janet said. "You did good, real good." Kevin's so happy he can't stop thinking about it. We told Rich and Gary and they're excited too, Janet said. We knew you could do it. I shared the news with my immediate family members next, and the reception was kind, but it couldn't compare with the hoopla Kevin was making about it. That's probably why I called Kevin first. As a fellow writer, I knew Kevin would get it. My family was polite about my good news, and I'm sure there were words of congratulations in there, but truth be told, as a family, we were challenged as a whole on how to celebrate things or people. That's another story, ask me later. But I know who my family is and their intentions. It's not personal. We were just brought up in survival mode, and as a result, celebrating anything was always a bit awkward. My parents split up when I was 3, so I have no memory of them being married and living together. I have no idea if there were any celebratory moments there. I doubt it, because there didn't seem to be any traces of anything when he left. There were no silly rituals. He didn't leave behind any traditions to carry on, other than the loudness of his silence. There was nothing significant to remember or hold on to, other than the enduring presence of his absence. Avoid questions unanswered. My mother worked as hard as she could for us to have the basics. She owned a home and kept us safe. We never went on vacation, ever. That was a luxury. Living from one paycheck and having enough for food, shelter, and clothing were our rewards. When birthdays came around, sometimes there were gifts, sometimes there weren't. Same thing with holidays. As adults, my siblings and I exchanged gifts, but we never waited for the day of the occasion to arrive. We rushed to deliver the gifts as soon as we purchased them, just to get it over with. Even if we spent a lot of time and effort into choosing just the right gift, it's almost a burden to just hold on to it. We didn't know how to do it right. It was a struggle. For Kevin, this was second nature. Kevin loved to celebrate his life, his family, his marriage. Kevin loved to celebrate me. In the weeks before my birthday in November, I would get a check in the mail. The memo usually read, cab fare. Kevin suffered from arthritis, among many other medical conditions he was challenged with and could not drive. I did not have a car either, but he always wanted me to be comfortable. He would give me cab fare to meet him and Janet at a restaurant or one of their favorite bars in Queens for my birthday. This was his way of treating me like a princess, door-to-door service. He did the same whenever his anniversary rolled around, so my son and I could join him and Janet for dinner and Black Forest cake. Checks for cab fare also came in the mail when there was a play he wanted us to see, or to get to his house for movies on New Year's Day, or lime green cupcakes on St. Patrick's Day. Every art show my son had, he was there, stuffing his hands in his pockets to take out some wrinkled bills to buy my son's watercolors and sketches. I still imagine him in my mind walking out of the studio, bragging to Janet that Silas was a young Picasso. I'm just going to say it, he said to me when I graduated from college. I couldn't be more proud of you if you were my own daughter. But I wasn't his daughter. Kevin and I were friends, best friends, he would point out to his friends when he introduced me. We met at work when I was a receptionist for a pipe and valve company, and he was a salesman. We sat a few feet away from each other in the office suite and became fast friends. In my heart, I know we became fast family as well. I was in my late teens and he was in his 50s. We struck up a conversation about books one afternoon, a few days after he was hired. He was reading a Stephen King novel, and I was writing a poem in a journal. We both picked up our heads around the same time and looked at each other. What you writing, Skye? He asked. A poem. I smiled. His eyes widened and he nodded his head. I love poetry. Janet writes too. She writes children's stories, he said quickly. I remember his grayish blue eyes sparkling with excitement. From then on, Kevin brought the New York Times into work every day for me. We would split the sections we loved the most. In between taking calls or separating staff mail at my desk, I pored over the arts and culture section. I'd give it to Kevin when I was done, and we would talk about it over lunch. Without fail, whenever he came to work, when he walked in with a little bop in his step, he would slide the Times section over my desk and say, hot off the press. He told me that I'd be in the Times one day, and he'd be glad to say he knew me then. On the day of my graduation, I reminded myself to buy a copy of the New York Times at Penn Station. My son was coming with me to the ceremony. My mother told me the week before that she didn't think she'd be able to make it on account of her health, which was in flux. I insisted that there was no way for her to predict how she would feel in a week in advance, but I decided not to press the issue. Her health was going through some mysterious changes, and her disposition was too. Despite all of that, I knew deep down that going to graduations just wasn't her thing. If it were, I am sure nothing would hold her back. But why force yourself to go somewhere for something you don't really care about? Not that she didn't care about me, that's not what I meant. I'm the kind of person who loves to celebrate little things. Hard for any occasion or hard for no occasion at all. My mother just wasn't like that. I just backed off. But I was still hurt. I then asked my brothers to attend right after my mother turned me down. I didn't want to hear another no, so I thought it would be easier. There is another graduation after this one, but smaller, not at the MetLife Arena. It's for our department. It'll be on the weekend, so you don't have to miss work, I told them. I adore graduation speeches. I knew my brothers didn't. Instead of hearing a quick no, or an excuse as to why they may not come, I tried to offer an alternative that might seem more appealing, or at least less boring. They both agreed to come to the MFA creative writing ceremony and dinner in August. I was spared. I didn't have to beg anyone. I didn't have to face rejection. Okay. Only it was not okay. My sister said no too. Told me that she never knew I was in grad school. What do you mean you never knew? What did you think I was doing for the past 2 years? You never told me about any grad school. You told me you were taking a class, she said. Class? I never said I was just taking a class. What about the trips I made to England? I told you I was in a program, I said, via text message. She responded that I never told her any such thing. She said I didn't think she was important enough for me to share her life with her, and that she didn't belong at the ceremony. Ask me later. Our relationship is another long story. She told me I should go ahead and invite all my friends because those were the people I really wanted to attend. I didn't really invite them either. I gave them the same alternative option I gave my brothers. I didn't want anyone to feel obligated to come and show support. I left voicemails, text messages the night before the ceremony, and I purposely didn't respond when they tried to get in contact with me. I made sure my messages did not include where the ceremony would be. The last thing I wanted was for any of them to show up at the MetLife Arena with cards and balloons. I mean, I wanted to attend, but I didn't want to attend just as much. As the winter months rolled by, the thought of it loomed in my mind. While my family and close friends knew I was in grad school, I kept the details in my head. I assumed that people weren't interested. I tend to believe that people would rather hear about the glory than the dust. Did anyone really want to hear how exhausted I was for the past 2 years? I didn't think so. Would my drained bank account be as entertaining in conversation as my trips to England for my program's writing residencies? Of course not. Isn't talking about oneself all the time pretentious anyway? The truth is, whenever I thought about grad school, the first thing that came to mind was sadness. Why would I want to share that? I knew it would be a hard day for me, and I don't do hard very well. Vulnerability and grace rarely are the dispositions I can exhibit at once. That requires a level of multitasking I am incapable of. But I wanted them there. I wanted my family and my friends to tell me that they'd be there no matter what. I'll be there with bells on, Kevin said, when I invited him to my college graduation. My heart, already broken, was now being stretched, pulled, stepped on, and ripped apart. I didn't invite Kevin to my MFA graduation. Kevin was gone. Kevin passed away a few months after I started the program. If Kevin couldn't be there, I didn't want anyone else there either. I didn't want the hugs and kisses from my loved ones. I didn't want the awkward congratulatory words that came from a genuine place from my brothers. I did not want to feel the largeness of anyone's love because it would only magnify the absence of Kevin. And Kevin's love was all that. It was spectacular. It was like Christmas and your birthday happening at the same time, with a Thanksgiving meal to top it off. Thanksgiving was our favorite holiday, just remembering. I only wanted my son there, one, because I thought it would be inspirational for him to hear the truth, to see the fruit of my achievement, and two, he's much taller than I am and pretty strong. If I cried myself into hysterics, he could carry me out of the gate. I knew he hated speeches too.
Allison Escoto, and to Erika Iverson, who directed these first two stories. So now we're going to do, I'm just going to let you guys do it, story switcheroo. So our next two storytellers for the second half of the evening are Angela Cobb and Ryan Holmes. And so Ryan, you'll be reading Angela's story first, correct? So Angela, I have a question for you. I know, I'm always trying not to Tony Danza out too much, but, so I've seen Angela perform numerous times at QED. You host your own storytelling monthly. You have one coming up on the 16th in May. It's a stand-up storytelling show all about people's first times. And I'm not going to ask you about your first time for obvious reasons, but I am going to ask you, I've always been really curious with stand-up, especially when you go and you have longer sets. Like, have you ever had a time where you really had to go to the bathroom? or like some other bodily thing that's like you just really had to muscle through? I mean, it might not be the best choice of words.
No. What do they call it? No. It's funny. So I haven't actually had like that impulse to do it, but I'm the type of person who usually, if I have to go to the bathroom, like, and it's too close to when I'm about to go on, and usually like when I'm hosting a show too, because I'm always worried that like, you know, the comic could have like 15 minutes, but I'm worried like, oh my god, what if he gets off stage early and I'm in the bathroom and then no one's gonna be there, you know? So I usually like will hold it and then go after if I have to, you know what I mean? And like I actually recently did a show where I did a long 45-minute set. And it was out in Long Island, and I was walking from the train station. He was texting me, the guy, the producer, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna probably end a little earlier than we expect." I was like, "Oh, all right." So I get there. So I literally just like got there, took my jacket and my backpack off. You know, I was on the train forever. So I get on stage and then afterwards, like, all right, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, because I've always just kind of wondered.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Now, next time you see me in the audience of one of your shows, you'll be like, she's just wondering if I have to go. So we're going to hear Plan B, written by Angela Cobb and performed by Ryan Holmes.
Plan B. So I lost my virginity at 25 during Hurricane Sandy to another comedian 27 years older than me. And because I don't do anything gradually, within the next 2 weeks, I purchased my first monostat and my first Plan B. I'm going to tell you about the latter. Hurricane Sandy was beautiful. Time and life stood still, and some of Frank's misgivings about pursuing a physical relationship with me began to fade, as our age difference eroded like Long Beach. When we got back to his apartment the night before the storm hit, he jokes from the kitchen while opening up our Chinese food. So at my funeral, I want them to say only 3 things. He was a brilliant comic, fantastic in bed, and nice, when no one was watching. Then he turns on the TV and we decide on Moonstruck as the perfect backdrop. Lying in his arms, I feel his left hand slowly glide underneath my shirt and begin to gently graze over the skin of my back. As our clothed bodies rubbed against each other, I feel a yearning and a powerlessness that both scares and exhilarates my former tomboy. I'm starting to understand what Frank told me a few days ago. Sex is when you just melt into the other person. Do you want me to melt you? As our clothes come off and I get on top of him, he reassures me, don't be afraid of it, there's nothing you can do wrong. With that, I feel the man I had waited a quarter of a century for glide into me. As I thrust into him with aching, intense hunger, my eyes stare directly into his kitchen. I look back down at him, and he says, you're having sex, and you're fucking great at it. I smile as my heart soars and my spine arches, displaying what he had called such a beautiful body a few days prior. But still so insecure and unsure of my abilities, I ask, does it feel good to you? To which he enthusiastically replies, are you kidding? I'm the luckiest guy in the world right now. You're gorgeous. Happily rolling over beside him and sliding into his arms, we both focus on the scene in the movie where the old couple is looking at La Luna, and the woman comments to her husband gazing out the window, you know, in that light, with that look on your face, you look 25 years old. And in that moment, Frank, A man who had once referred to himself as the comedy equivalent of Lou Gossett Jr. in An Officer and a Gentleman releases a genuine, "Aww," looking adorable in his sweatpants and Obama Biden t-shirt. Frank reassures me that he wants me to spend the night. And as I open my eyes the next morning, it crosses my mind that if my life ended in that moment, I'd die finally feeling beautiful. Soon realizing the storm was more intense than either of us had anticipated, we also soon realized that neither one of us cared. Seconds blend into minutes, minutes blend into hours, hours blend into days. "Every inch of you is perfect," he utters, caressing my thigh. "Do you feel how bad I want to fuck you? How beautiful I think you are?" he asks, as I feel the power of his body on top of me. "You're stunning like this," he tells me, while I'm donning his oversized hoodie. I laugh. He stops me. "Angela, now's not the time to be a self-effacing comic. Right now you're a beautiful woman and you're underneath me. It's like I'm fucking a statue," he says, his beautiful brown eyes gazing directly into mine. "You make me feel like a work of art," I gasp through tears. And finally, I evaporate beneath the weight of him as he whispers in my ear, "Is this how you imagined it? Is this what you dreamed about?" We have fun together. We watch a documentary on the ancient Mayans while he calls himself a nerd. We catch a special on the Kennedys while he sighs, "There was so much optimism back then." We laugh hysterically as we play We Fit, and I feel his chest rise and fall under my head, the smell of Marlboro Lights lingering as he feeds me candy from Rehoboth Beach. But in between the moments of bliss, Frank still expressed his doubts and concerns. The age difference, the virginity, the fact that he was once my comedy teacher. When I admit that I never thought he could want me, he replies, "See, you say that and it just makes me feel like I'm gonna break your heart." No matter how much fun we were having, in the quiet moments, the fear and wisdom of a weathered man, beaten around by comedy and life, persisted. "You're gorgeous. I just don't want to hurt you. I like you too much." When the taxis are finally up and running again, Frank sadly looks at me and admits, "You know, I really am going to miss you." I tell him I'll call him when I get home. He insists, "Call me the second you get home." And as we walk to the corner, I see him stretching the rubber band I'd used to tie my hair up across his hand. He kisses me, and through the window of the cab, I see him waving both hands goodbye as I'm driven off to Brooklyn. And as I gaze out of the rain-speckled window at the city lights along the BQE, I feel a lump in my throat. I'm in the last scene of some movie. Old standards like Every Time We Say Goodbye and For All We Know should be playing. The credits should roll. A perfect ending. Movies know when to end. Lovers, on the other hand, do not. And every bubble must eventually burst. The result of our Hurricane Sex Fest was, understandably, me getting a case of what they used to call the honeymoon disease, and so our time spent together in the week following Sandy was very sweet. A lot of cuddling, eating nachos, and dry humping against the backdrop of the 2012 presidential election. So when my little situation downstairs clears up and we can have sex again, I tell him, "Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play." That's what I said. Because I'm so romantic. But I was also really nervous because time is no longer standing still, and real life is back. As I leave an open mic, he calls me and goes, "I don't have any condoms. Can you be a grown-up and go buy some?" Now, here's the thing. I was a virgin for 25 years, so I love getting condoms. I wanted confetti to fall. I was also a tomboy as a kid, so I bought those condoms with such swagger, it wasn't even funny. I was like, bam, magnums, like I was the one wearing them. I get back to his place, and my fears are confirmed, because As we attempt to get intimate, he becomes frustrated, impatient, and angry with me. He dismissively says, "Get dressed, we're done," and goes into the kitchen to smoke a cigarette. At this point, I'm very scared, and it hits me. The hurricane is over, and he's him, and I have to deal with the fact that he's another comic who's 27 years older than me, who's a recovering alcoholic, who can kind of be a bit of a dick. The sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach makes the inequality of our situation all too clear. Because while part of me is another comic with an ego of my own, quick to give a smart-ass retort, another part of me trembles with the fear of a fan asking John Lennon for his autograph, unsure whether they'll be encountering the vulnerable, peace-promoting pacifist or the egomaniac who hit his first wife. But we attempted to have sex again, this time in missionary, the position post-virginity loss me is most comfortable with. And after being inside me for about 45 seconds and telling me how good I feel, he suddenly realizes he's not wearing a condom, and he freaks out. He starts going, "Oh my God, I'm very scared right now. Stop talking, I'm very scared right now." And there we are, both of us sitting naked on his futon, and he continues to panic. "I was mature enough to tell you to buy the condoms, but I wasn't mature enough to put one on." Meanwhile, I'm just like, "We ordered pizza. Where's the pizza?" And all these catastrophic scenarios start coming into his head. "Oh my God, it's almost Thanksgiving. That means you'd have to have an abortion around Christmas time. How could you even look at me after that?" Now, to recap, this is a comic in his 50s who's banged hundreds of chicks and on the road, who once had a reputation for sleeping with every female comic. I'm 25 and I just had sex for the first time 2 weeks ago, but he's the one freaking out? So, putting aside my concern with the whereabouts of our pizza, I kind of nonchalantly suggest, "Look, we could just get Plan B." And he responds, "Oh, what's that, like the morning after pill, right?" At which point he busts out his laptop and starts Googling Plan B. And we're on the website, and there's a stock photo of a woman looking all stressed out, and he's like, "Oh, honey, I don't want that to be you." And I'm just thinking, pizza. Hello! So Frank scrolls down and looks at the rate of effectiveness versus how quickly a person takes the pill. Meanwhile, I'm saying, I can just go get it tomorrow on the way to work. But he's all, "No, what if there's side effects? I don't want you to be in pain." No, but apparently he doesn't mind if I'm in hunger. So off we go, on Operation Emergency Contraceptive. He suggests there's a 24-hour CVS on Ditmars. This is 3 subway stops away. But because time is apparently of the essence, we take a cab. And I don't hear old standards playing in the background during this cab ride. More like Billy Joel's Pressure or Rock You Like a Hurricane. And once we get there, Frank goes from a panicked sense of urgency to, "You go do your thing, I'm going to look at Christmas decorations." Now, being a virgin for 25 years, I'm excited to be eligible for Plan B. So I go up to the counter, and it's around 10:30 at night, and I say, "Yeah, I'd like to buy some Plan B." And without missing a beat, the pharmacist just goes, "Let me see if I have any left." And it's in these types of moments that I become my father. I so just wanted to be like, "Rough night, eh, pharmacist? A lot of girls slutting it up in the Astoria Ditmars area?" So I've got the Plan B, and since time is no longer of the essence, we walk back to his place, take a lovely stroll down 31st Street, the subway tracks quaking above us. And at that point, he just looks at me and goes, "You know, you're very hot, and that's why I was so concerned. Because I was only inside of you for like 2 seconds, and I felt the troops starting to rally." Again, much like me, so romantic. So we get back to his apartment, and the pizza finally did arrive, I should mention. And apparently nausea is one of the side effects, so Frank jokes, "Oh, that's going to go real great with the cheese and pepperoni." But I take the pill, I eat the pizza, and it actually ends up being a very romantic night. He tells me he really just enjoys spending time with me, even if we're only being affectionate. He's holding me in his arms, and we fall asleep watching this old movie on TCM where Olivia de Havilland's husband has her committed to a mental hospital, which in retrospect was extremely apropos. And in the end, even a few years later, when we finally clear the air about my heartbreak and what had gone wrong in our relationship, yelling at each other on a street corner the way all good Italian Gemini comics should, he looks at me and goes, "Remember that night we had to go and buy that stupid pill? I had fun that night." And through tears, I smile and say, "You know what? Me too."
Thank you, Ryan and Angela.
I really like time to train things. He has it in with the MTA.
So before I forget, over by the wine, we have our email list. So if you'd like to sign up before you leave to get more information about Angela's upcoming show, and I'm teaching a writing workshop here at the Astoria Bookshop this weekend, and other fun Queens Literary events, please sure to sign that on the way out. So our last story this evening, Switching It Up, will be performed by Angela. It was actually written by Ryan. I don't know why you're saying that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You still have your- So Ryan is actually you're an alum. You're returning to Know You Tell It.
Yes.
We sucked you back in to work on this because I'm very excited because Ryan actually has more of a long form project that this story is part of tonight. So without giving, I'll trust you to not give away too many spoilers, but I thought maybe you could try to tell the audience here a little bit about the collection that you're working on.
I
that
just
we're going to hear a little bit of tonight.
Sure. I go to a lot of weddings, and they're starting to wear on me a bit. I'm writing a book about all of my wedding experiences, and I won't give away the title, but a few strange ones have happened. You'll hear about one of them, but that is in the coming. I went on a retreat to go, I self-imposed writer's retreat to go work on it in the Berkshires, and I figured it would be good to go on in like a relaxing retreat, so I booked it at this spa area, and I walked into, and I got a speeding ticket on the way there, and which was really threw off the trip. And when I got there, and I got into the spa, the hot tub that I've been waiting the whole time had a totally naked old guy in it, and I didn't realize that it was a totally nude spa. So that was frustrating, and he was like very blatantly massaging his genitals on one of the I haven't done much work on the book since.
Traumatized. So the last story this evening is Terror in Virginia, written by Ryan Holmes and performed by Angela Cobb.
Terror in Virginia. Out of all the weddings you don't want to go to, this one sounds the least desirable. My psychiatrist said when I told him I was considering going to my friend Emily's wedding in Virginia. Emily, her fiance, and I met when we all attended the same drama department in college. I agreed with my therapist, but at this point, I had said yes to so many weddings that I had no idea how to refuse an invitation. I even had the text written out. "Hey, my love, I'm so sorry I won't be able to make it to Virginia, but I hope you have an amazing time. Congratulations." Before I sent it, I thought about cutting a rug on the dance floor with some of the other friends I knew would be there. I like those people. Maybe I should go. I would at least have fun dancing. At nearly every wedding I attend, the marrying couple has the DJ or band play the Ignition remix or the Step in the Name of Love remix, both by my favorite, R. Kelly. Yes, favorite. Deal with it. When these songs come on, people pull me to the center of the dance floor. And if it's the latter, I'll even lead the corresponding line dance known as the love slide. I thought about the potential of these moments and how much fun I might have. Now, a major drawback with any wedding is how expensive they are. I would have to rent a car, but living in New York, I jump at the chance to drive. I would have to pay for a hotel, but I do have a strange proclivity for hotel rooms. I don't want to go to this wedding, but I enjoy weddings in general. About 25% of the time. 20. 19. One slip of the finger on my cell phone would have saved me. But once I imagined celebrating with a few of my closer friends, certainly not the bride or the groom, I deleted the text I had written, wrote, "I'll be there," and hit send. At that point, I knew I'd be attending. What I didn't know was that by the end of this wedding, somebody would end up dead. Emily was happy I was coming to her wedding, but I wasn't initially sure why I was even invited. We had a lot of mutual friends who were much closer to her than I was. They weren't invited. Emily and I barely hung out. She graduated Syracuse a year before I did. We weren't particularly close when we both lived in Los Angeles. And now had the fact that I was in Brooklyn and she was in the faraway galaxy of Astoria to contribute to our lack of camaraderie. We mostly ran into each other at mutual friends' parties, or weddings. I found out at her engagement party, the reason I was invited and our mutual friends were not was because I had not slept with her. While most of my friends had. She didn't want to invite anyone to her wedding with whom she had been physically intimate, which greatly narrowed the field of potential attendees. The exception to this rule was our friend who had had sex with both the bride and the groom at different times. And then it was okay. I should have slept with Emily in college. Or maybe I should have jumped in line when she had sex with my two roommates on back-to-back nights when we both lived in LA. I also knew the groom, Brandon. He was a few years my junior at Syracuse, but no matter how much I tried, I could not for the life of me remember that it was he Emily was getting married to. I haven't even mentioned his name until now. Something about this wedding just felt off. I didn't buy the couple, no matter how in love they may be. I didn't have the money to spend on yet another destination wedding, but I went, and it was terrific. In the literal sense. The literal meaning of terrific is inspired by terror. The wedding was at some fancy land development in the small Virginia town of Hamilton. And no, there weren't any cool rapping presidents or treasury secretaries. I thought I had left my hotel with enough time to get to the venue before the show started, but as I drove in, I could see and hear the ceremony beginning. The venue staff had me park up on a nearby hill. Just beyond the hill, there was a house with a yard that had two terriers running amok. I didn't think much of it, other than the dogs seemed insane. But they were allowed out in the open. They must be fine, right? When I exited my rental car and began to gather my things, one of the unrestrained dogs headbutted me in the back of my thigh. Scared, I got back in the car and closed the door. Already late, I heard the officiant begin the proceedings just down the hill. Embarrassed by my tardiness, I waited for the head-butting dog to go far enough away to where I hoped I could nonchalantly walk down the hill with neither one of us disturbing the other. I got back out of the car a second time, and, as casually as possible, began making my way down the hill wearing my Ryan Seacrest distinction midnight blue suit. Oh no. The dog started barking again, ran up to me, and bit me in the back of my thigh. Fuck! The dog owner came out of his front door and asked if I was okay. I replied angrily, "Well, I just got bit." He said, "Let's take a look." "It's here," I said, pointing very close to my ass. He said, "He didn't break the skin or anything, did he?" I said, I don't think so." He replied, "Okay, he's just excited with all the traffic." I said, "Gotcha," and made my way back down that motherfucking hill. What was I supposed to say at that point? Probably not, "Gotcha," but I was not in an ideal mental or physical state. With the wedding underway, I tried to limp into proceedings as sneakily as possible. However, the most hidden path to the back row of chairs was made of gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Everyone could hear me come in. Sitting in the back row on one butt cheek, I waved to hundreds of friends who were in the wedding party, faked the smile, and endured the second most painful wedding ceremony of my life. While I writhed in pain, my skin burning, I witnessed the cheesiest,
most cliche-filled wedding ceremony I had ever seen. I already didn't buy these two as a couple, so this didn't help. Their friend who was marrying them waxed broetic, comparing their union to the sun and the stars and other nauseating, inducing hot spheres of plasma. Once the ceremony was over, the couple took a picture of all their guests. Immediately after, they announced, "Brandon and Emily are pregnant!" A fact that 100% of the audience already knew. I guess this was one moment our acting degrees came in handy. As they were taking this photo of false surprise and forced happiness, I turned to my college friend Jamie and said, "I just got bit by a dog. What am I supposed to do? Do I need to go to the emergency room?" She gasped, "Oh my God! Well, I think you're okay if you didn't break the skin." When we were finally done taking those goddamn pictures, I went into the bathroom to check. There was no mirror, so I couldn't see the back of my leg. Jamie offered to come in the bathroom with me. I said, "I'm going to see if Lundy will do it. His dad's a doctor." I was referring to Matt Lundy, a guy in Brandon's class and in the wedding party to whom I had been very close and for whom I had at one point had unrequited, allegedly, romantic feelings. Lundy walked by and I asked Jamie to tell him what happened. She said, "Ryan needs you to come in the bathroom with him because he just got bitten by a dog and he needs to pull down his pants so you can have a look." Lundy said, "Oh my God, you did this on purpose." I said, I would do this on purpose, but not this time." We made our way to the washroom with Lundy repeatedly saying, "Nothing to see here," on our way in. We went in together, locked the door, and I dropped my pants. He muttered, "Oh. Oh." Did he break the skin? He did. He did. Should I go to the hospital? No, let's just get you some Neosporin. You're fine. He even offered to FaceTime his dad, Dr. Lundy, but I declined. Enough Lundys had seen me pantsless for one night. He took me to the next floor over from the bathroom where a gray-haired, bearded gentleman was fiddling with the lighting and sound controls. He introduced him as Henry, the owner of the wedding venue. Henry was an older man, around my height, in good shape for his age, and dressed in a black suit for the wedding he was hosting. Henry simultaneously exuded an aura of compassion and toughness. Lundy told him what happened, and Henry said, "Oh my God, that's never happened before. That guy just moved in about a month ago, and we don't know him. Let's do a little better than Neosporin. We'll get you cleaned up." Henry left his post at the wedding venue to take me up another hill to his house. I followed him, embarrassed. I was about to have to drop my pants in front of this old stranger. On the way to his bathroom, he greeted and hugged his son, who had just returned from college for summer break. He said, "Cole, this is Ryan." We shook hands. It was weird. Henry and I got to his upstairs bathroom. We went in together, locked the door, and I dropped my pants. He applied hydrogen peroxide and triple antibiotic cream. He said, "I'll give you the name of the dog owner, and you can do what you want with it. He used to be a linebacker at Penn State." My initial thought when he said that was, I don't want to sue anybody who got molested. But Jerry Sandusky had not molested the college athletes, just the younger summer camp athletes. I should have sued. Henry quipped, "Yeah, he's not much of a linebacker anymore. Looks like he's eaten one too many Cheetos." I pulled up my pants, and my new friend Henry and I headed back to the reception. All I could think about was rabies, but everyone kept telling me to just get the bike checked out by a doctor the next day when I got back to New York. On the way back down, Henry said, "I bet some whiskey will make you feel better." I said, "Actually, I stopped drinking 3.5 years ago." So that was out. Though there was a moment during that god-awful ceremony where I thought, you know what would make the pain go away? I went to my friends and semi-friends, and I pretended I was having a good time while writhing in pain and worrying about rabies. Henry checked in on me periodically throughout the course of the night. When dinner was served, he said, "Ryan, you've got to try the brisket. It's like an aphrodisiac. It will make the pain subside." I think Henry was looking for a different word there. but I knew what he meant. I went through the motions, socialized with friends, posed for pictures, danced to Justin Timberlake, Bruno Mars, Backstreet Boys, and yes, R. Kelly. Pitch black in the hills of small-town Virginia, I was a bit out of sorts and couldn't find where I parked. So I went back into the wedding venue and found Henry, who always seemed to be right there when I needed him. Either he was a really nice guy, or he was trying not to get sued himself. I asked where I parked. He said, "Yeah, I think you're just up there," and then came out of his AV booth. As he exited, he said, "Oh, by the way, he killed the dog." What? He killed the dog. How? I think he just took him out back and... I said, "I didn't want that to happen." Henry turned to his assistant and asked, "Richard, why don't you clarify for Ryan what happened there?" Richard, horrified, inquired, "You told him?" Henry replied, "Well, it's what happened. And frankly, it's what should happen. You can't have your dog going around biting people." Richard explained the dog who bit me was a 12-year-old rescue who had recently been adopted and had been a nightmare ever since for the owner. I guess the dog biting me was the final straw. When I got back to my rental car, 2 of my friends' husbands were getting stoned after already being wasted. One of them, another Ryan, said, "Dude, it's not your fault, man. When I was 7, our dog attacked me. I'll show you the scars." No thanks. They took the dog to the vet, and when they got back, I asked where he was, and my mom said he wasn't coming back. And that really fucked me up for a while. These stoners in the woods were my consolation. I shouldn't have even been there. I was only there because I never slept with Emily. Drive back to my hotel, the Westin, in Reston. The Westin Reston. I started tearing up and shaking. I was in a state of shock, literal shock. Partly because of the dog bite, but mostly because of the murder. I picked up some Neosporin, got back to my hotel room, alone, locked the door, and dropped my pants. I did speak to a physician the next day, and as far as I know, I don't have rabies. Though it would have been quite the spectacle if I were to have entered the wedding venue foaming at the mouth. My shrink was right. I should have said no. And I almost did. The photos and videos from this event show this was the happiest day of Emily and Brandon's life. But this was a brutal, painful, fatal, terrific, shotgun wedding. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Angela and Ryan and our first 2 storytellers, Allison and Skye. This stories were directed by our photographer, also to Mike Dressel.
We should do everything.
Wait, what would you do now?
Don't do your thing at the end.
No, not a group thing. That's how it's on. Continue, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to turn things over to Erika. We've all been working together for about a month to put these stories together. So Erika has prepared some trivia for you guys. So the storytellers and directors are not allowed to answer or win, but hopefully you guys are listening.
You have to call on people for
Okay, I will call on people. And I'll turn it over to you for the
So
trivia.
we started this tradition of doing trivia. At one point it was literary trivia, and then we ran out of literary trivia, at least that I knew anything about. And so we started quizzing you on the stories. So we're going to find out how carefully you were listening tonight. But it's a very, very low stakes test because aside from No You Tell It, one of my other favorite things is going to 99-cent stores and buying stupid things. So those are our prizes for tonight. But we're starting off with a hard one. These are in order of the stories we're here tonight. In Vessel in Distress, the author receives a multisyllabic diagnosis. What is it? Points for effort.
In the back, in the back.
Supraventricular tachycardia.
I think you are a dragon warrior hat in honor. Okay. According to the author of Vessel in Distress, what are some of the things you should avoid if you have this? Name 3, if you could.
Right there in the hat.
Caffeine, sugar, fun.
Yes.
Joy.
The other thing you should avoid is very, very hot water, and this hot safe bathtub has a sticker on the bottom that says hot. So if you put it in the water and it says hot, it's too hot to put your baby in. Or yourself or your dog. Just be very careful. This will protect you. Okay. In higher degrees of grief, Skye receives special occasion checks from her friend Kevin. What does the memo line say?
In the back of the glasses.
Cab fare.
Cab fare! This is in honor of the art shows that Kevin would go to. This is a set of jumbo frozen Disney themed crayons. There proudly says 4 extra crayons on there. You get all the colors, whatever they are.
The leftover ones, the melted ones.
This is the first time the prizes have been themed too.
I tried to do theme prizes. It's not always successful. But okay, in Plan B, the author describes several TV shows, movies, and documentaries playing in the background during her romantic Hurricane Sandy rendezvous. Name one. Yes.
History of the Aztecs.
Yes!
I wasn't doing a lot of history.
This is protective gear, like Plan B, to protect you. So these are some Minnie Mouse swim goggles. You can wear them while swimming, or if you need to chop some onions or something like that. Okay. The other answers were, by the way, Moonstruck, A Special on the Kennedys, or that movie where Olivia de Havilland's husband had been admitted to a mental institution, which I looked at. It's called The Snake Pit. Yeah. Okay, in Terror in Virginia, Henry, the proprietor of the wedding venue, stops to introduce Ryan to someone on the way to drop his pants to look at the dog bite. Who do they meet?
Cole?
Yes! You don't even have to remember his name. It's Cole. It's Henry's son Cole. You get this glow-in-the-dark Spider-Man one. It'll help you
On the streets
go back to your car when you're parked at the top of the hill. And the bonus question is, why was Ryan one of the only people from his college friend group to attend this particular wedding? Yes.
He didn't sleep with the bride.
He didn't sleep with the bride. And again, on the section, we have a frozen swim ring life preserver.
Oh, wow.
This will protect you from drowning. We do have to pack up because we're heading out, but tonight we're also celebrating Miss Kelly Jean's birthday. So we're going to head over to Second Son.
There's a couple blocks here on Broadway, but also too, I just wanted to put out a shout out to the Astoria Bookshop. I know Mother's Day is coming up, so rather than go on Amazon, there's like tons of lovely gifts to buy here. Support your local bookstores, but we don't want to keep them too late here tonight, so we're gonna finish up the wine, sign the email list, pull up the chairs, and we'll meet you at the bar. And if also too, if you want to gather out front and chat with each other. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
And last round of applause for all 4 up front really quick, just so I can get a quick picture of you before I have to run